Welcome back, everyone, to the PetaPixel podcast. This week, we're changing it to the Murphy's Law podcast because everything has gone wrong. We'll rattle off some of those reasons why we might seem, slightly different, a little more under the gun than usual. But we got some cool stuff to talk about. We just got back from a trip in Idaho. Jaron was there as well. We can talk about our shooting experience. We're seeing some brand new lenses, the type of which we've never seen before from their respective manufacturers. And we are going to do our best to get caught up on tech support. Don't read the comments. We got a lot, so let's get started, everybody. As always, this week's podcast is brought to you by OM System. With the hot temperatures of summer behind us, there's no better season for outdoor photography than autumn. We were just out in the fall colors shooting with an OM1, so this is very timely. Crisp morning air, golden light all set the stage to capture portfolio-worthy images. The OM System OM5 is the ultimate companion for the outdoor enthusiast. Built to endure your adventures, this is a mid-range mirrorless camera that's a rugged marvel with its weather-sealed body to safeguard against dust, water, and extreme temperatures, ensuring unmatched durability. The OM5 offers advanced technology to deliver stunning image quality and exceptional performance in any condition. From breathtaking landscapes to action-packed moments, the OM5 empowers you to embrace your adventurous spirit while preserving the memories of your journey. Learn more about the OM5 and the highly respected M Zuiko lens series by visiting explore.omsystem.com/PetaPixel. Thanks so much to OM for sponsoring this episode.
So as you mentioned, we were just in Idaho and we chased all those autumn colors down. And it was beautiful. The colors were fantastic.
I felt like they were changing while we were there. They kept getting brighter. Yeah.
And we kept moving north and south the whole week. So it's like, colors are different here than over here. We're moving through different climates all week long. Yes. So yes, we were definitely chasing and occasionally caught those colors.
And as Jordan mentioned, we took the OM1 in this particular case, but I mean, they're sealed in a very similar manner. And we went up in ATVs, in Polaris Razors, and we got the cameras covered in fine particulate, which is actually worse than, like rain and stuff in a lot of cases. And as Jordan also stated, the rugged builds safeguarded the camera against that dust. So OM System does a great job of safeguarding your memories.
Oh man, you can't let them get away with anything, can you, Chris?
No, I mean it's a shame. This is the first time I've ever misspoke, and it was on podcast. So definitely hold my feet to the fire for that.
So a couple things. We don't have any news stories we're going to talk about this week. We're going to focus our attention on, I guess they are technically news. The two new lenses that came out like late last night. But what I do want to mention is if you're watching us on YouTube, you are very likely seeing that I have a different microphone than I typically do. Jordan's doesn't look different from this angle, but it is different.
It's got a pop guard, which I usually don't.
It does.
Chris is using the same one, but he has COVID, so he's not going to necessarily sound the same as he usually does.
So you can kind of judge the three mics, but I'm actually gonna start talking like this for the rest of the podcast, because first off, it's incredibly sexy, and second off, it's way more comfortable to speak like this than in my regular voice right now. So away we go, ring a ding ding.
I do want to say though, anyone who's listening, compare how we sound, and we want to know what you think. So I'm using a new Shure microphone that I'm actively reviewing right now, and Jordan is using one of Sony's new microphones that were announced a week and a half or so ago. And we're just curious what you think how they do. If you like them, if you don't like them, your input is just as valuable as us sitting here listening to our own voices. So
please let us know. And I'm using our classic Sennheiser profile with a $10 Amazon COVID infused pop guard. So let us know how that sounds, if it's any different.
Well, and we should point out what's kind of cool about them. So, Jaron, you're using a new Shure mic that's based on the SM7B, which is like the most famous podcasting mic. I mean, every like high-end podcaster seems to be using it. But what's cool about the new one?
It has a built-in preamp. So I don't have to have anything special going on here, and it should theoretically work with any computer as well. But if anyone who knows audio will be like, well, you can't just plug that into a computer. It's XLR. You're right. But this little doohickey right here, Shure actually announced this maybe a month ago, and you connect XLR into it, and it goes straight into USB and then straight into my computer. So I don't have to do anything differently than I usually do. My Rode is a NT, it's NT USB. I think that's what it's called. I've been using that one for years. I'm happy to use this though because it feels significantly more robust, even if it doesn't sound that different to you guys. I don't know.
It sounds great to me, but I don't want to skew the results. I'm skewing the results already. This is terrible.
You sound great. I need that too because the voice going up and down all the time, low and high. It'd be nice to have that preamp to sort of level things out a little bit more. Yeah, I should like this.
I should mention I'm using the ECM S1, Sony's new microphone, which we can just plug it into USB like I'm doing right now. But what's really cool with this is it's also a wireless mic that's compatible with Sony's hot shoes. So if you want to, those cameras have the ability to just plug them in and use them as a webcam. You could also just pick up this microphone, throw it on your desk or a light stand, and it'll go straight into the camera. So you're not going to have any latency issues when you're doing that, which is something we do occasionally fight with on this show. So that's pretty sweet. I'm not using a Sony right now. I should have run it over to Chris, who's filming with a Sony microphone, but I don't want to be around him right now.
I also just fired up Shure's software. I didn't have it going at the beginning of this. So now this should theoretically compress my audio by itself and also limit me so that I don't peak at any point.
Oh, I thought it was going to deep fake you into a celebrity voice or something.
I wish. Alas. All right. That's enough of that. Let's talk about some new lenses, the likes of which we've never seen before.
I mean, Chris has seen one of them in person.
Okay, well, I meant
Let's be clear.
as in like the world of cameras has never seen these exact lenses ever made before. Let's talk the first one because Chris will have the most to say about it. Let's talk Nikon. Nikon has announced a 600mm f6.3 VR S Super Telephoto prime lens. And even though we didn't get a chance to make a video about it, Chris did set his hot little hands on it when we were in Monterey a few weeks ago.
Yes, and it was a secret then, but now it's not a secret. And so I think the key thing here to remember, this uses PF optics, which stands for Phase Fresnel, or as some people like to say, Phase Fresnel.
Only one person.
Okay, not me though. But so the key thing here is this. I mean, Nikon make a 180 to 600 that has a 6.3 aperture at the 600 range. It's a nice zoom. It's very well stabilized, very well built, but it's quite large. And so the thing that I first noticed off the bat here is very lightweight. 3 pounds, not quite a knocked and a half, but it's very lightweight.
Three plena.
Yeah, is it
it's
3
plena? No, it's a plena.
That's a pound.
1.4 plena.
Thank you.
And so what I noticed from it, again, it was an early model. We can't really make any real judgments. We're going to review it, baby, but it's sharp. That I could tell. Color looks nice. It was very easy to handhold and very well stabilized. I think you get 6 stops.
You do
with the appropriate body when it's equipped all together. Yep. So it's very, 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 very nice, very smooth.
It's compatible with a 1.4x and a 2x telephoto, which can turn it into an 800 and a 1200 millimeter, respectively. I mean, you're going to lose a lot of light going to 2x, but I mean, if you're shooting broad daylight birds, it doesn't really matter that much.
Well, I think what's cool is we had a maximum aperture where the autofocus would still work on DSLRs. So I really like that a lot of the mirrorless companies now are embracing hey, as long as we've got enough light, our autofocus still works at incredibly small apertures.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's give you the option to use teleconverters if that's a compromise that you're willing to make. I think it's really, really smart. And again, I just have to shout out Nikon. I love this trend for compact telephotos. I think it's awesome.
And it keeps the price down a little bit too for people who want to get into it. I mean, 6.3 is not fast. I mean, make no mistake about it, but it's affordable. It's lightweight. The stepping motor keeps the cost down, but I still found it to be quite snappy. I don't think that's an issue. And I think there's a big market for people that just want less bulk to carry. And we can crank the ISO on cameras now and really get away with it. So, I liked it a lot. I'm eager to play with it more.
I don't know that we knew the price when you held it, so
no,
we assumed it was
$8 million.
No, we assumed it was going to be cheaper than the faster zoom lenses, and I think it is. I don't remember how much those cost, but this will be available late this month for $47.99.95 US.
Yeah, not bad for a 600 mil that's sharp.
Yeah. It has 4 FN2 buttons and 1 FN button that can be customized and assigned to a variety of functions too. So like, I mean, Nikon has been really going hard at the long range lenses and with the Z series for some time now, and I'm happy to see it. You can tell who they want as their user, and I'm sure those users are very pleased that they keep getting more lens support.
Yeah, we actually put the on our recent best things about every camera company for Nikon. We said telephoto is their best aspect right now, I would say, and then they're just embellishing it even more with this. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Nikon's jumping on this whole Phase Fresnel kind of thing, right? I mean, I thought Canon was going to really kind of fly with that, and they sort of let it go. And the Phase Fresnel for Nikon, it's actually done very well for them. I mean, it's we really like their other lenses that use it that are quite a bit lighter weight and more compact. Who doesn't want more compact?
Certainly not me, I guess. All right, so at the complete other end of the spectrum is a very wide zoom from Canon.
Yes.
We have
not got our mitts on this yet.
No, we have not seen this lens in person. I have seen pictures of this lens. It is a compact RF 10-20mm f4 L IS STM for full frame cameras. 10-20mm f4 for full frame has not ever existed?
Never. No.
Now, I made this not a mistake, but I mean, I think a lot of people out there will be like, well, wait, what about the similar L series lens that was released for SLRs? But that was an 11-20 f4 L series. And this is giving us a couple benefits. First off, it's wider. And even though it's 1 millimeter, we're talking this extreme wide angle, that is significant, right? I mean,
it's 130 degrees versus 122 degrees.
Yeah.
That's better to frame of reference as opposed to the 1 millimeter doesn't sound like much, but when you're this wide, it is significant. Sorry to interrupt you, Chris. You may continue.
That's okay. But also, just the fact that because it's a mirrorless design as opposed to an SLR design, the lens can be optimized a little bit better. It's going to be a little bit more compact. I mean, these are all benefits with that mirrorless kind of frame, having the flange closer to the body. So I'm excited to play with it. I think it's going to be interesting.
I would like to make a recommendation for everyone who's bringing out unbelievable new formulas for full frame lenses. Could you please stop using ones that are very common focal lengths for APS-C cameras? Because several times this week, we've been looking at the upcoming, we're going to do a review on the Tamron 17-50, which sounds very exciting, and I keep mentioning it and then thinking it's just an APS-C standard zoom lens, and it's not. It's super wide. Same with this 10-20. I'm like, oh, great, just another crop sensor ultra wide lens. No, it's super compelling because it's full frame. So just make like a 10-19 and like a 17-47. So at least I remember this is a totally separate thing from all those APS-C zooms.
I don't think that's going to work. We're running out of millimeter focal lengths. I mean, there's going to be some overlap.
It's only for my own sanity. It serves no practical purpose besides that. I mean, maybe I'll just learn. That's probably the best solution.
I misspoke, and before anyone calls me out in the comments, I'm going to correct myself. I said it was 130 versus 122. It's 130 versus 126.
Right.
So it's not that significant, but it is if you compare it to what's available on Sony, the 12-24 f2.8 GM, it's wider than that by a notable amount. And then on the Nikon end, the 14-24 f2.8, it is wider than that as well. If you're going from 14 wide to 10 wide, that's
corrected, Jaron. I was about to get a pitchfork and come after you.
I am curious to see if there's distortion and if it's bad. But given that they gave it the L,
I think it'll be great.
I think it's probably going to be pretty good.
It's the same as every mirrorless lens. It's going to be digitally corrected, so you're not going to see it. You know, that's the common theme, and that's how they're able to make formulas like this. You know, they're like, it's compact and insanely wide. The only way to do that is digital distortion correction.
Nice to see image stabilization put into this lens as well, too. I mean, I like that. You know, not that they don't in the past, but it's a nice choice to have that extra stability. You might think, oh, for a wide angle, what do I need it for? But again, it's about having that ability to hand hold. But I'm also interested to see how this will play out in video applications. And I know I'm not Jordan, and I realize I'm very heavily medicated, but I am still actually quite interested in how this lens will perform for video, for moving pictures.
Okay.
I'm very medicated.
Yeah, it's okay. That's why we're gonna keep this this train moving along. Hopefully, and by hopefully I mean certainly, we will see a Chris and Jordan review of both of these lenses at some point in the future.
I can feel my hair. Like the hair has feeling right now.
Extremely heavily medicated.
Okay.
So with that in mind, let's
I think it's
recap.
orange behind me. I'm not sure.
Let's recap. What have we been up to this week? Just to go over why Chris and how Chris got sick. And I'm actually
I don't know how, and I don't know why. Probably because I'm a bad person and karma has caught up with me. But we were in Idaho, which is lovely. We've got a project. It's very exciting. You're gonna have to wait a little bit. I'm gonna bring the timbre down so I don't cough. It's very exciting. You're gonna have to wait a couple months to see it, but it's gonna be worthwhile.
So we actually got a comment, one, but I read
About
every
Idaho?
comment, even though I'm not supposed to. Never read them because they just like eat at you. But I saw one comment that was like, I'm tired of Chris and Jordan only doing gear focused videos. Why don't they just do something about photography?
Right.
And I'm sitting there like, we've tried. But this is one where we actually are doing that, where you guys just go and enjoy being photographers in a new space. That's the basic theme of this episode that will come out probably in January, is what I'm thinking.
Now, we also did, of course, the space doc with Blair Bunting, which was an awesome project in that same vein, right? Talk about the application of the art form that we all know and love versus the actual tech behind it. But yeah, I mean, Idaho is quite close to where we live in Alberta. I've only ever driven through the very bottom south end in passing, never actually stopping. And so to go travel there, I have to say, I think it's actually more beautiful than Alberta. And I know that's terrible. There's lots of beautiful things about here, but I thought, I mean, it was breathtaking.
Well, so much for our Travel Alberta contract that I was really angling for.
Well, shoot. Hawaii then. Hawaii next.
Slightly prettier than Idaho will be the new slogan for Travel
That's
Alberta.
our new benchmark.
Growing up in California, I really did get kind of spoiled with how landscapes and climates can look, because in California you can be on the beach surfing and then skiing that evening if you want to. Like it's you're very compacted, and then all the way there's prairies and mountains. The everything, just topography is so different. Driving through Idaho, a place that I also had never spent any time in, it really, there were areas of it that were staggeringly beautiful.
Yes.
Just sit there and be like, man, this is incredible.
And not just the topography, but the light was gorgeous, like all the time almost. And we had patches of fog just like coming out of nowhere. Like this is stuff that you would use a machine to make for your photograph, and it's just happening. And we're seeing amazing fall colors. And actually the look of the state changes dramatically even after a fairly short drive, although we did do a lot of driving.
A ton of it, hours and hours. But on those drives, when we were on a very strict schedule, Jordan can back me up here, Chris was literally pawing at the windows. Like his hands were hitting it, trying to get out, because he really wanted to be in the water many, many times.
Now, we should, based on our previous conversation, not in the water to splash and enjoy himself and swim and enjoy that wet feeling upon him. No. He wanted to fish. And unfortunately, and we did not get really any time for him to.
No, it's just about the most. Yeah, it's just about the most perfect place on planet Earth to fish. I mean, every patch of water, even like the tiniest drainage ditch there, had fish in it, right? Like I think
we were standing next to a drainage, like a small little creek ditch-ish thing, and Chris is like, "There's a fish right there, foot-long fish right there."
They were like on their little fins, like up waving at us as we drove by.
They were taunting me like, "Catch me if you can," and then
but you can't. I know that you're on a tight schedule.
It's all for show. You don't have a fly on. You're just doing it for the show. I was to say the least a little bit upset, and it's just because like it's not that I don't understand the context of what we're trying to do, but you're talking about these experiences. I mean, these are world famous rivers like the Clearwater, the Payette, the Clark River, the Salmon River, Birch Creek. Like these are creeks and rivers that are world famous in the fly fishing community. There are rods and reels and bags and jackets named after these rivers. And we're just driving past them, and gorgeous like creeks and canyons. And big deep green pools, and I mean and there's salmon there and steelhead. We don't get that here in Alberta. So
Yeah, you see,
I'm
even though he's medicated and sick, you can hear it in his voice. You can almost hear his fingers against the glass.
yeah.
Pawing
I
at
scratched at the glass and I cried a bit, and I'll never forgive any of you ever.
Perfect. I mean,
Okay,
I have to say, like, Chris, I'm shocked that you made it through this trip, because you totally like busted at getting all of these like hundreds of photos and stuff like that. And I actually got to look through some of them for an episode that will be live by the time you
Yes.
listen to this, our iPhone versus Z8, which we shot out in Idaho. And there are some samples from the trip in that. So you should totally check them out and get a little sneak preview of that Idaho video that we'll have coming up a little bit later. But yeah, good job. The only consequence is, of course, your body is now susceptible to sickness, which you are now riddled with.
It was very stressful. You know, I kind of made look, there's so much more to Idaho than just fishing. I mean, the skiing is amazing. The people are very cool. We did some cool projects. I think people are really excited to watch it because we did some really crazy stuff and a lot of stuff. And the food was amazing. But it's like, it'd be like, I think Jared, we were talking about this, right? It's like going to Hawaii and you're like, okay, we're going to look at coconuts.
It really was. Allegory.
Yeah. It's like, we're going to go to Hawaii. We're going to look at coconuts. We're going to look at rainforests. We're going to look at volcanoes. We're going to ride bikes around that. We're going to meet a bunch of cool people. But the beach there, do you see the beach there? Just look at it. We're not going to go to it. We're not going to go swim in it. And I think for you, it's like, here's poke bowls. Look at them through the window. Okay, now we're going to go. Let's go. Let's go get McDonald's breakfast.
Bring it up to your mouth, but don't eat it. Put it back in the bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll film you about to eat it. It's going to look like something's going to happen there, but then spit it. Yeah. Don't even spit it. It doesn't get to touch your mouth. Just throw it in the garbage. I got in waders. Dump coffee grounds on it. Let's go.
I got in waders. I got my rod out. I'm casting for the thing, but I'm not catching. It's like, okay, you can lick the tuna, smell it, stick your finger in it. Okay, now put the ahi tuna poke bowl back on the shelf. Let's go.
I'm so sorry.
I'm forgiving the whole state of Idaho here eventually,
but not us.
Not us.
No, God, no, never.
Before we move on to address this litany of comments that we need to get through, Chris, there's something sitting on your desk. Please describe what that is.
So this is lovely. So for my birthday present, I got two things. I got COVID and I got huckleberry jam. Jaron was really nice. We went to see the Nimi Poo people in the Nez Perce Reserve, and Jaron got me this huckleberry jam.
He's never had huckleberry before, which is...
No, and I didn't realize it's such a big thing in Idaho and Montana. So
and Washington, actually, and Oregon. So up here in the PNW, it's kind of funny to me that you're not that much farther north, but you do not have huckleberries.
No, we get Saskatoons. We don't get huckleberries.
They're little berries that are smaller than a blueberry, and they're kind of pear-shaped-ish. They're not fully round, I guess is the best way to describe them. And they only grow wild. You can grow them domestically, but they don't turn out quite right. Kind of like morel mushrooms. You can do it, but they're just not the same. So huckleberry is huge here. Love it. If you ever have Tillamook... ice cream, they do I think they'll do a huckleberry one on occasion, but local ice cream places get it too, and it is a unique berry, so I'm excited.
I can't wait to get all the stickies in my beard. I'm excited.
I was gonna say we should do a taste test live on the pod, but I don't know how your taste is functioning, Chris, so maybe we should bank that for a couple weeks from now. Put it on toast or something mid-pod.
Okay. Let's get to the questions. We'll do tech support first. Of these, we have a couple that came via email and a couple that are on SpeakPipe. We will start with email. The first one is from Wolfgang, and this one is
Wolfgang.
I'll read it to you, and it's a pixel binning question. I am afraid this is a question rather than a... Oh, sorry. He submitted this through our tip line, so I was like, this is a question, not a tip. Pixel binning is used by a few camera manufacturers only. At the same time, there is a growing tendency to increase the pixel count on image sensors, resulting in a higher image resolution. Higher resolution image sensors mean the pixel pitch is very small, high pixel density, and the traditional perception is this may result in weaker low light performance of the image sensor. I understand that pixel binning is seen as a means to optimize image quality in situations where low light performance may be more important than a high resolution showing all the details in a particular image, which may otherwise be affected by increased noise. If this is the holy grail for counterbalancing different objectives and needs required in different situations, then why is it not used systematically by all camera manufacturers for new cameras? Has the technology not evolved sufficiently to include this as a routine in high-resolution image sensors? Is it too expensive, or does the technology have any drawbacks? Looking forward to hearing your response.
Yeah. Jordan, I'm going to let you talk
Perfect.
because I'm super gracious that way. But I think it's important that we understand that we look at this and approach it from both a stills and a video standpoint separately, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, because we do have examples out there. This is something that smartphones are pretty much all doing at this point, is using quad Bayer sensors, at least on their main cameras right now. So you've got the option of resolution or improving your low light performance by binning all of those pixels together. We have actually seen this in larger sensors. Like there is a full frame Sony chip that they're using in the FX3, A7S3, FX6. That is, people have taken a look at it. It's a 48 megapixel quad Bayer sensor, but there's no way for you to access the 48 megapixel resolution of that. And the reason I think that they've done that, first of all, it is actually, considering how low resolution it is, it's quite sharp. I mean, it's certainly cameras that shoot oversampled video are going to do a little bit better job than that. But I think the main reason they did it is readout speed. You can just read it out very, very quick. That's why we've got a full frame chip that's able to, shoot 4K 120p with a very small crop, have minimal rolling shutter in it. Photographically, we haven't seen it. I believe you actually answered it in your email there. It's just, I believe, very expensive at this point. And I don't think that there's a lot of fabrication for quad Bayer larger sensors. But this could certainly be an option down the road. The big takeaway I had, we talked about this quite a bit back when we were at DP Review with some of the team, is just that the differences are much more pronounced on very small sensors like smartphones than what you see once you start moving up. The circuitry and everything there isn't degrading your image quality as much as when you've got a very bitty sensor. But I suspect we'll see this in the future. It's much like when we started to see BSI sensors in smartphones and compact cameras. That led to a big image quality bump. We didn't really see a huge image quality bump, just faster readout when that was brought to larger sensors. I suspect we'll see something similar here.
I think it's also important to talk about, just as a side note, there is a very oversimplified concept that, if you have more megapixels, that means smaller pixel pitch and more noise, more signal noise ratio, less light getting into your little micro lenses, yada yada. And that is true, but it's not that simple. I mean, one thing to keep in mind as well is even though sensors have gone higher resolution, that doesn't necessarily mean that the perceived look of noise is going to be more extreme and worse than, say, lower megapixel sensors, because having that extra resolution also means that at a regular viewing size or print size, each of your individual pixels are smaller. So even though you have higher resolution, you also have more megapixels, and therefore the little dots are smaller, and therefore the noise is actually less perceptible. So it's not as simple as just to say, like a 60 megapixel sensor is going to be all about high resolution shooting. It's going to look great in bright light, but terrible in low light. Honestly, in most output situations, that's not the case.
Yeah, we did a video busting that myth a little while back, and it's all because Lightroom, all your editing software, gives you the option to view everything at 100%. If you have a high-resolution camera zooming into 100%, you're zooming in on that image way, way more. But if you look at them on the same viewing size, you will definitely see that. And, I mean, when we did that test, we shot images at 6400. If you go to astronomically high ISO levels, then you will definitely see it. My wife did a test with the Nikon D6 and a Z9, so 45 megapixels versus 20 megapixels. And yes, once you got past like 25,600, certainly the lower resolution sensor was less noisy. But how often are you actually doing that?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think you'll get way better low light performance at like 1600 to 6400 ISO. You really won't for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. Good question.
Yeah, that's why we saved that one, because I knew you guys wanted to think about it a bit more. So, okay.
But it wasn't a tip or a pitch, Wolfgang.
It was not a tip or a pitch. It was a question.
Sorry, I'm just mad about the fishing still. It's not. You haven't done anything to me. I apologize, Wolfgang. I'm sorry.
The next one is also an email. This one is from Anthony Cronhelm. I'm frustrated that no camera manufacturer has really bothered to make cameras more easily operated in cold weather when wearing gloves. I would like to see the joystick and other dials on the camera mode slightly bigger than most manufacturers are doing right now. Too many times I've had to take my gloves off so I could operate the camera only for my fingers, but froze and shortened my photo shoot. Camera manufacturers are putting photographers at risk for getting frostbite. He's saying he wants something that could work. Not only the camera can operate, but you can operate in negative 25 degrees Celsius or more. Why do you think no manufacturer does this?
Because Japan is predominantly a warm country and everybody there has small hands. That's my guess.
Good guess. I think wrong.
I think that's a big part of the whole mirrorless when there's a really big camera, there's a backlash against it. Like, remember the Leica SL? I mean, we were even guilty for this, comparing it to something you could use as a doorstop when it first came out. The Panasonic.
That was one of my best projects ever.
The big S1, S1R, S1H. Same thing, there was definitely why are these things so big? But I want to say those are some of my favorite cameras to use in very cold environments. Like the S1H, I still think is the best handling mirrorless body when it's very cold out. And then if you ever get a chance, there's the Pentec 645Z.
Oh, I love that camera.
It feels incredible in your hand and was built to be used with gloves. They're like, make it as big as possible.
I got to interrupt. I'm going to test one of the features on the Sennheiser profile. That's the mute button. Hopefully it works.
It does not. No. It does not work. Good try though. I think the actual answer to this, and it's not just that they don't want to make them big. It's that the people that require what you have just asked is the smallest bit of already the smallest group of people purchasing cameras.
Yeah.
They don't make cameras
I think the thing here too,
for everyone.
Look at the Nikon Z9. I mean, that's a quite large camera. The R3. Yeah. I mean, maybe not the R3 because it's still very compact, which is why I love it. But there are cameras that have the larger grips and the larger button space and frankly more real estate. But at the same time, mirrorless, I mean, remember, one of the Sony's 5 fundamentals is compactness, right? So
no, it's just compact. Just compact.
Compact. Yeah. Sorry.
Compactness would be more useful.
Okay, compact. But that's even more universal, right?
Yeah.
So trying to make mirrorless cameras smaller in most situations. I get it, though. I mean, we live in a beautiful country, which is a frozen hellscape for 6 months of the year.
But not quite as beautiful as Idaho.
Correct. Yes.
No, not quite
early established, yeah.
Yeah, but close, but not quite. But, it's tough. I mean, that's why we use alternatives like the G-Tech hand warmers, right? Stuff like that. Or some of the photographers that do wildlife out here in the wintertime, they'll use warming gloves with electric heaters, but you still have to take it off to actually operate the camera. And then you got your fingers back warm. There are legit many times where we're shooting our YouTube show in winter and my fingers don't work very well anymore. And I lose a lot of dexterity and it is a challenge. I can sympathize. Also, larger batteries with bigger batteries tend to last better in the winter, whereas a lot of the compact mirrorless, you also have problems with batteries getting cold faster. Move to Hawaii. But don't touch that ahi tuna poke bowl. Don't do it.
Yeah, only look at it. I think that there are some things you can buy that are like you stick them onto your camera to increase the size of the buttons or their tactile dexterity or whatever. They're
AF joystick specifically. Yeah, I see that.
I remember there was one for the shutter I had used before. I don't know if it's still available, and I never really liked it. But it would have been great if I was wearing gloves. I don't like it on bare skin. So you can probably get stuff that makes this easier, but you bring up a solid point. Unfortunately, there's just not enough of you to warrant manufacturing a camera with all these things at the cost of making it larger and therefore angering a larger group of people who would then therefore not buy it.
I recommend taking up ice fishing for the winter months. I think that's
and don't forget, you can now get a banging deal on a 645Z, the best handling camera ever made. And it's very big and it'll feel great with gloves.
Can you?
I'm going to try something. Maybe this winter we should try what the swimmers do when they swim the English Channel. I'm going to cover my hands and camera in petroleum jelly and use it that way. And we'll see if that makes it warmer.
You can.
I don't see any downsides with this approach.
The 645Z can still be purchased brand new for $7,000.
But I bet KEH has a great deal.
Probably. You could probably get them used for less. So that's great. Okay. Next one is a speak pipe question. We're going to listen to Kwang Yo.
Hey guys, it's Quang calling from Oakville, Ontario, Canada. I love the show. I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about all the factors that you consider when looking at changing camera systems. I've been a Nikon DSLR shooter for the last 14 years, and I'm thinking about making the transition to mirrorless. Certainly with the release of the Nikon ZF, I've been really interested in doing that, but I've also been really interested in some of the third-party lens options available to Fujifilm and Sony. So I'd love to hear about all the different considerations you guys put in to when you're thinking about different camera systems and maybe starting anew. Thanks a lot.
First off, I'm sorry we left it so long. We've seen this speak pipe for a long time. I'm happy that we're finally addressing it. If I was going to put in my 2 cents, one of the first things I look at right away before brand is just what kind of lens mount I want as far as what sensor size. APS-C, full frame, maybe even larger than full frame, maybe micro four thirds. I like to consider that because it gives me some idea of what my goals are, what kind of photography I want to do, pick a sensor size that suits that, and then choose a brand within that sensor size.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. One great thing, because you've been using a DSLR, that I really like is check the metadata of your images and find out where you're shooting, like which focal lengths, which apertures, and make sure that there's really good options for you there in whichever mount you're potentially looking at, or just go to Sony because you can find basically anything that you could ever want in that mount. But I find that really useful, and a lot of stuff that maybe I hadn't even noticed. That's how I discovered that I really like shooting at 135 and 24 millimeter focal lengths, was just based on checking that out. So I would definitely take a look at it. But yeah, I agree with Chris 100%. Like, first priority is lenses. The second one we also talked about a little bit last week is I would get your hands on them and see what you enjoy using.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's very difficult because, like we said, camera stores are more of a rarity right now. But I would say that is the second most important thing, because there are cameras in wonderful systems that I just don't love using, and other people do really enjoy.
Yeah.
So make sure that you actually get your hands on it and don't just base it on, online reviews, even though you should keep watching our online reviews, which are informative and entertaining.
I got a hot take here, and I'm probably going to catch some flack, but the fact that you are coming from an SLR brand already, I as much as the manufacturers probably will now censor me for saying this, I really don't consider too much about staying brand loyal when switching from an SLR to a mirrorless. There is an advantage with using your old lenses, and some people absolutely will. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. There are great adapters. I mean, Nikon make the FTZs. They're great, but I feel like it's worth doing a completely fresh start. And of course, it looks like Kwang is actually thinking about this, right? He's thinking, okay, maybe Fujifilm, maybe Sony. He certainly seems to be geared towards a kind of a vintage aesthetic. I mean, he's mentioned the ZF, the Fujifilm, those are nice options too. Sony, I think, is a great tool. It's a workman's tool. It can do anything. So consider what kind of photography you're wanting to do specifically. If it was more rugged wildlife stuff, then I think Micro Four Thirds has a lot of basis. We have to know if you're going to be more of a hybrid shooter. You want to do video and stills, or you can do a lot of low light, or you can do a lot of portraiture, flash work. That will give you also a better idea of what kind of readout speeds you might need for your sensors and who makes those and what's available. You might be just saying, I only want to shoot in minus 30 degree temperatures. And then clearly Jordan wants you to get a Pentax 645Z. So yeah, let us know. You can always give us another comment. This is what you like to do. And then we'd be happy to try to elaborate on that.
Okay. Let's move on to Alistair.
Hi, guys. Alistair from England here. I was recently hiking in Switzerland and taking photos of the beautiful mountains there. And it was only when I got home and was sort of looking at them in Lightroom and then, paring them down, putting them into a sort of final album for potentially a photo book. It was when I was setting a desktop wallpaper that I realized that there was just this random photo of the lot that was my favorite one that I can't even really remember taking. It reminded me of when I was watching your iPhone video of, the greatest photo that Chris has ever taken. I just wondered if you have more instances like that of just, you take a whole bunch of photos and actually the best one, your favorite one, down the line turns out to be this random one that, you never thought of in the moment. Just love to get your thoughts on that and sort of your stories of just random awesome photos. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
So just to give some context, first thing I want to say, I'm sure Switzerland has beautiful mountains, but they're not as beautiful as Idaho's. Second thing I want to say, this, just to give context, the greatest photo ever taken by Chris, according to Jordan. I was shooting this like very cool restaurant hallway, and a nice lady photobombed it, and I caught it, and Jordan loves that photo. So there's the context. I don't think it's the greatest photo I've ever taken, but there's lots of moments like that, absolutely, where I'm going through all my shots at the end of the day, or, clearing out my memory card and having a look. And there are always tons of moments where you see a shot and you're like, oh, that's the one that I really want. That's the keeper. That was great. There was an interesting quote that I always heard from Gary Winogrand, who's a famous street photographer back in the day. Not really a quote, but more an anecdote about how he shot. He would shoot a whole bunch of stuff, and then he would just put it away, and he wouldn't touch it for months, weeks, months, before he developed it and looked at it again. And that's because he would say that while you're out shooting, I'm sure we all had this experience, you're caught up in the moment. Idaho's really pretty. The colors are great. I'm not sick yet. I'm having a great time. I'm not mad about fishing yet. And so that can actually kind of like color the way you're going to feel about those shots. And he wanted to put photos away, come back to them later and say, look, I want to look at this with fresh eyes where I'm not, where I'm not kind of tainted by the mood I was in or the experience I just had. And I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, another thing I think is really worth pointing out is because cameras have gotten so much better, a lot of shots that I would have just been like, oh, that's no good. I totally fudged the exposure on it or something like that. There's lots of examples of where I've been like, oh, but that's maybe the best expression in that particular one. And just, it's underexposed, push the shadows, or the color's totally off, just fix it because I have the raw files there. That has happened to me tons of times, especially with kids, where it's just like, I got the shot. My settings were all screwed up. I'm a bad photographer and a worse parent. But wait, because of technology, I can recover those moments. So yeah, just, never really worry about that. There was a great example. I forget where I saw it, of a wedding photographer where his strobes weren't firing. And caught like a couple of amazing candids of the couple by pushing the shadows like 7 stops because he had a D850.
Right.
Things like that. It's always worth just scrolling through those and things you might initially throw away. Just see like, hey, with a little bit of finessing in post, can I save this?
I do have to say I overshoot a lot now. And I think that's actually from deep review days where I was very conscious about trying to get technically perfect photos. And I don't necessarily think that's a nice way to think about photography. I really much rather enjoy just like shooting and seeing what happens. But, we were doing a lot of tests and samples, and I really want to make sure I got good focus, right shot settings, everything. So I've learned a habit now of overshooting a lot. And I find that I do that now. I machine gun a lot of pictures. And I think that's actually a pretty good technique just for capturing and ensuring that you got something in that light that you like and that you have something sharp, even if you're shooting, like, especially if you're shooting at really slow shutter speeds comparatively. Mm-hmm. And so I've gotten to that habit. I don't regret it, but there's lots of situations where I will look at my photos and the shot that I really want is the one that's out of focus or is blurry or is soft. And that hurts a lot.
I was going to mention that where I feel like I'm in the field and I've taken the perfect photo. I'm like, awesome. I'll look for that one later. And I go back and it is not in. And it's like, oh, that really sucks. But at the same time, the shot that I wasn't thinking about actually is great. And I will use something like that. So that kind of ties into what you mentioned earlier, maybe taking a break from photos and coming back. So you're not emotionally tied to this photo you think you got. You're separated from it. I don't really have that opportunity as much as I would like to, since, when you're reviewing camera equipment, it's basically shoot it, plug it in, upload it, and that sort of thing. But I'm hoping that, as I try and get back into photography as a hobby again, as it's been difficult for me.
But if you see us on the street and you want Jordan to be happy, just photobomb my shots, okay? And then he'll be like, that's the best shot. Chris.
I think that looks like the cover of a horror movie poster that they spent a long time staging to make it unsettling, and it just happened. And it delighted me when I was looking at all these pretty street photography, and then there's just this woman looking like she's a screaming zombie running into your frame. Loved it.
She's very nice.
Perfect
and
moment.
I don't think she realizes that now she's immortalized. So that's what happens.
When you photobomb, be aware. It might be when you look scary, and that picture might be taken.
Jordan's
and it
putting
might
it
be
in.
art.
Okay, that was it for tech support. We finally got through a bunch. Now we're going to
Are
move
we caught
on.
up? Not caught up.
Not
though,
caught
right?
up. No, I've still got more
Is
in my email.
Is this still like it's like horse racing or like a greyhound racing where the rabbit goes around the track and we have to keep chasing the rabbit? Because if we catch it, the show's done, right?
We're just pushing the comment boulder.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The carrot.
I bumped
gotta
my
keep the carrot
softbox
out
there. No more
on the stick.
gesturing.
All right.
All right. So in Never Read the Comments, we have one more speak pipe question. This is from Dave from Milwaukee.
Hi, guys. I'm have a question about OM System, your sponsor. I'm a big fan of their pen line, and they don't have any of them available in the U.S., although they seem to have them in other places. I'm wondering if you know anything about whether or not they plan on discontinuing, or if there's just a lull, or what's happening with that line. Anyway, love the podcast and OM System. Bye.
That's a great question, Dave, for Milwaukee. I'm sure your state's also incredibly beautiful.
I've been there recently. It actually is.
Yeah, they don't do the pen line here. They do it in Japan. I know it's big there. And lots of other parts of Asia. That's a great question because, we've seen OM System now rehashing a lot of cameras. I mean, like the EM5 Mark III now being the OM5 with some updates. So it's feasible that we could see a pen. I hope it's like a brand new design that we've never seen before.
That may be why we haven't yet, because they want to actually refurb the line. I remember, gosh, it's probably been 5 or 6 years now. I would actually recommend the pen to people because it was so compact and yet still so performant.
And pretty.
That it just felt like something you can use to create something. A friend of mine who lives in New York, who's, a camera snob, who typically doesn't like anything other than full frame, loves his pen. And that's like where he makes his one exception is for his pen. And you're right. I'd forgotten about this line. It's weird that now I'm thinking about it. It is strange we haven't gotten a new one.
Well, and I'm a big proponent.
There's a huge opportunity there as well because the Pen F is one of the most beautiful cameras ever made, I would say. But it did have a limitation where it's beautiful, Chris. Gorgeous camera. Great camera. But it didn't actually focus quite as well, even though it was the same price as at that time. I believe it was the EM5 original. It was going back quite a ways. That was always a real limitation for us. It's like you're paying the same price. This is a beautiful camera, but it doesn't perform quite as well. If you just, if at all possible, slapped the internals of an OM1 into a beautiful rangefinder style body, I think people would be really excited about it, especially because like the Fujifilm X Pro series got weird when the 3 came out. So this could be a chance for a less weird, more accessible rangefinder style body that I think a lot of people will be very excited by.
And we've talked about this in the podcast before, right? How Panasonic were like, hey, you guys need to bring back the GM series, right? Like there's a demand for small, sexy little cameras. I love Micro Four Thirds in particular, where you can have these tiny cameras with tiny lenses. I mean, as much as, Fujifilm X100V is great, it'd be great to have, I loved having a small pocket camera with interchangeable lenses, and Olympus made really cute little 12 mils and stuff, like really nice lenses that were quite compact. So I would love to see that.
The answer is we don't
Panasonic
know.
or OM System.
We don't know why we haven't seen it. We're just
that
guessing.
Being said, the OM5 is actually still very small and beautiful. I actually think it's more beautiful than the Pen F personally.
And wow. I do think it's interesting that one of the last lenses with an Olympus badge on it ever produced was the 20mm 1.4, which is a gorgeous lens, but looks like it was specifically designed for a rangefinder style body that doesn't exist in North America. I mean, I'm sure people in Japan are loving popping that on their Pen 11, whatever we're at now. I don't know, because I'm not going to review them because they're not over here.
Yeah.
I think it's called the OM System Pineapple Pen now, or something like that over there.
It's not called that.
Okay. my voice is almost gone. I'm going to have to go back to sexy Chris now.
Okay.
If
Yeah,
that's okay.
you can't
Everybody's
help
okay
it.
with
Sometimes
sexy
you
Chris.
get so excited that you push yourself.
know.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, we only got a few more questions here, and these ones are mostly just some that I thought were interesting. These are on the YouTube comments.
Compliments?
Some of them from the last podcast, Flavor Hostage, which I think is a
Perfect. 10 out of 10.
So good. I don't even know what it means, but I love it.
If there was a
COVID is holding
Pokeball
my
here,
flavors
Jaron would
hostage.
be a flavor hostage.
All right. First thing he says is that YouTube thumbnails are weird. Agreed. We do what we have to please the YouTube gods.
Yes.
Then he says, I'm watching because I like Jordan and Chris. Jaren is growing on me. I'm glad I'm
Nice.
growing. I'm doing my best to meet the standards of which that have been set by these two. He also adds, I'm in Portland where there's at least 2 camera stores, one within walking distance to me, though I'm too lazy to walk. Jaren needs to leave the house. Smiley face. He's not wrong. I really do need to leave the house more. But I do love
You
my
should go out
basement.
with Flavor Hostage. You and Flavor Hostage.
You can
You
take
could
me to
become
camera
buddies.
store.
You would keep
Go to the
growing
camera
on
store.
Flavor Hostage. You're local. It'll be a great hit up both
Yeah.
camera stores in a single day. Have a nice cup of coffee. I think it'd be a great
Yes.
afternoon.
I'm wondering if
In a
these
world.
camera stores are new cameras or if they're like KEH style places where they've
Yeah.
got old stuff and old film stuff. There's nothing wrong with that, but that was related to the discussion of new gear camera stores where you can go try out the latest stuff before you buy.
Yeah.
I will go find out. I will leave my house.
You guys should do that.
That said, I did
We'll
just leave
film
my
it.
house for a week and I'm
We'll film it.
tired. So maybe.
In a world where the YouTube gods want weird thumbnails, Jaren and Flavor Hostage went to a camera store.
Is this because you're like talking low and that's how you think you sound?
This is what you get now.
All right. John Drummond Photo says about our podcast that it was great, but the lighting was terrible in all caps.
Correct.
Directly into the sun? What were you guys thinking?
One of the questions was about hood, so I made a deliberate choice to give you a visual demonstration of why things could look bad if light was hitting the lens at an oblique angle. What do you think, Chris?
Is what Jordan wants you all to believe.
The truth of it was revealed in the first like 10 seconds of that podcast,
Yes.
which is we did not do a good job the first time, and that was round 2, and we were very limited on places to shoot that had light at all. That was going to sit
Exactly.
there and actually work for an hour and 15 minutes. So
Although I think that it did have a nice aesthetic actually in some ways.
I didn't hate it.
you know, it can't always be.
it can't be
always
this. You can't
perfect
control the
technical light.
sun in places you've never been before.
No.
What do you want? Do you want us together? People who want us together?
Next time, we're going to have to drag out a giant light tent and, some cob lights and stuff.
Right.
And we'll do a much better job of that in the future. We'll have hoods on both lenses. You're going to love it.
wouldn't have made
Who
any
knows
difference,
when
though. The
that
sun
will
was-
ever happen.
We'll
The
just
sun
go
was
sit
right
back.
into
We'll
those
go
lenses.
get that Apple Studio, and we'll just bring that with us everywhere, along with the crew. That'll solve the problem.
There you go.
All right. 2 more questions. One is on Sigma's lens that you guys reviewed last week. From Archive asks, thanks for the video. I'm a 16 to 35 millimeter GM user. How do you think of the difference between the two? Is the 10 to 18 comparable?
No.
This is a tough one because what's so funny?
Jordan's like, no, next question.
This is a tough one because the 1635 G Master is obviously a full frame lens and a beautiful one at that. The Sigma 10 to 18 will only cover APS-C. So are they using the 1635 on an APS-C camera? In that case, the 10 to 18 will absolutely give you a dramatic difference as far as framing goes. But the Sigma 10 to 18, as cute as it is, there are a lot of optical compromises there. It is in no way, shape, or form comparable to the 1635, even just in terms of its optical performance.
Yeah, they designed it with the intention of making the smallest possible ultra-wide lens that's still quite bright. There were bound to be some trade-offs for that. I still think it is a good lens that'll make a lot of people, especially video shooters, really happy. But we even said in our 16 to 35 GM2 review, look, the 1635 GM is a damn good lens already. So this is the least necessary upgrade in their little lens trilogy, quadrilogy. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
gosh.
I'm tired too. Chris is sick, but we've all had a week. You're not getting
It's
A
true.
plus.
It's true.
If you're using an APS-C camera and you bought a 16 to 35 G Master thinking you were getting 16, that's you spend a lot of money to get not 16.
Right.
For APS-C cameras, you should consider ones that are made for APS-C to get that wide angle you're hoping for.
But the 1635 is a beautiful
It's beautiful.
lens. I mean,
Beautiful lens. I'm sure they are quite satisfied with the
and the new one's
image
even
results.
better, but just by a little bit. So even if you have the first version, that's a great lens.
And this is why we keep harping on manufacturers like make native APS-C lenses. Canon especially is really bad for just put our lovely full frame RF lenses on your crop sensor
It's only $4,500. You can afford it.
Exactly. It's more expensive. It's bulkier than it needs to be, and it's probably going to be slower than it needs to be as well. So make native APS-C glass. Everyone.
So one more similar question. This one is from Akira Hojo. How does that lens, the Sigma lens, compare to the Sony 10 to 20 f4, besides the pricing, for landscape, astro, and video?
So Akira Hojo II, this is interesting because we did test the 10 to 18, but not for astro. And actually, that's a good question. I'd be curious to see what the coma is like. How does it handle the corners? When we're talking about like stars and bright specular highlights. So we were negligent. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny day. Make note though that we were next to the river, and I also did not fish that day.
That extra stop of light on the Sigma will make a huge difference in reducing the noise on that. I mean, that's the same difference as moving up to a full frame camera. Getting that extra stop of light. But yes, unfortunately, we weren't able to test it for that. I do really like on the Sony, that's a power zoom, which for video can give you some really fun looks, like a nice servo zoom push in during a shot. It's a really striking look now that we see so few, like no one's using a camcorder anymore. So actually having like a slow controlled zoom is a really unique aesthetic that I really love. So that is a
both
powerful
are quite
thing on
small too. They're
very
small,
both compact. So
and even though it's a power zoom, I actually remember enjoying using it. It wasn't really like a detriment. I didn't mind it. It was fine. For stills. And the 10 to 20 is a nice landscape lens. And I would also go and say, I'm not saying the Sigma 10 to 18 is bad at 2.8. It's perfectly fine, but it definitely does like to be stopped down a bit for optimum performance. So although you do have the option of shooting an extra stop of light, which is usable and useful, more times than not, I would choose not to if I had the light. And then in which case I'm like, well, what am I really gaining? Yeah. And the sun stars aren't pretty. I'm sorry. They're just not.
They are not that far apart in price either. So you said other than price, but what the Sigma is 600 and the PZ is 650. I mean, that actually
but the 10
is not
to 18. Sorry, the Sigma 10 to 18. It doesn't breathe very much. I mean, and the manual focus is fairly smooth. I mean, it's not a bad video lens.
Yeah, they're both good video lenses, which makes things even a little bit trickier.
Yeah, that's
tough. I'm sorry, we didn't totally answer your, like, once we get to like small, cheap, and bright, there's going to be trade-offs. You're just going to have to compare the two because they're going to have to make a compromise somewhere.
Assuming that it does do a good job in the corners with coma and stuff, because I don't remember the 10 to 20 being particularly great for astrophotography, then I would say the 2.8 would be beneficial.
Okay. Well, this is a shorter episode than usual. I'm totally fine with that because Chris is hanging on by a thread. We offered to have him take this week off, and he said no, he was doing it. So this is how much he cares about you guys. He wanted to be here for you. And he
loves you as much as he loves Idaho and regrets
not as
not
much
fishing.
As fishing, though, but close. Yes.
Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll be here next week as usual, and hopefully Chris will feel better.
If I survive.
If Chris does not,
in a world
where Chris is alive,
COVID, you will see another podcast shortly.
Chris, why don't you send us off with your movie voice?
Okay. What happens at the end of a movie? Do I sound like Archer? Do I sound like the guy who does Archer? No, not even close.
John H. Benjamin? Not at all.
No, John H. Benjamin. Not even
Maybe get closer to the mic and you will.
Phrases. No.
All right.
Bye everybody. See ya.
With not a bang, but a whimper.
Phrasing.